I just got a prompt that I should smile. Probably because it's 8 o'clock and it's time for Beyond the Headlines, when we look at a lot of the issues that we've been talking about on the surface, but we can take beyond the headlines. I'm your presenter, Odette Campbell, and this evening our panelists are people in the business sector. We have heard all of the very frightening news in the last 72 or so hours. It started last Monday and continued into the last week and into the weekend. And today we had a very grim report from the Ministry of Health, which we will look back on. And we'll be looking at COVID-19 and its emerging dynamics. And to do that this evening, I have with me three very distinguished officials. And let me just say that Glynis Roberts will be very pleased, because I tried to balance the panel this evening. She always complains that I have a set of males. But let's see, our producer, what our panel lineup is like this evening. And in Grenada, we have Mr. Michael Ponte-Archibald. He is a business consultant. He's a retired banker. As a child, I knew of the National Commercial Bank. He headed up the NCB. Mr. Archibald, from the good old days. I have Miss Merle Bayer. She's like a rose. I wouldn't say among thorns this evening, never happened. Miss Merle Bayer is an entrepreneur. She's a businesswoman. She's a business executive. We can give her all those names. So she says, it doesn't bring me any benefits at the supermarket, so don't bother with the titles of that. But we're so happy to have Miss Bayer with us this evening. We'll tell you a little bit about what she does. And out of Dominica, Naturals, we are so pleased to have Mr. Michelle Williams. And don't come for me, people. He told me he was christened Michelle Williams. I don't know if that's the Shell Talpri was looking for, but Mr. Williams, we're starting with you for an explanation. Hello to Dominica.
Hello, good evening. Good to be here. Grenada is like my second home, so it's always a pleasure to be on in Grenada.
Very good. And you want to certify that I got the name and the pronunciation correct. Michelle Williams?
Yes, that is very correct. It's not the shell that is missing, but it is definitely, that is my name, Michelle, the French one.
The French one. I just wanted to be certain. You know, you have these four-finger warriors, you know, that come on. Well, anyway, right. So we had this very grim report coming out of the Ministry of Health, and let's go back to Christina John for that to set the tone, and we then start the discussions.
One vaccinated person among the 12 COVID-19 related deaths. Health Minister Nicholas Steele indicated that it was a lone elderly female in her 90s. The minister also highlighted the number of persons presently hospitalized.
And that was a 97-year-old female. 29 patients in total. 7 are critical. 2 of those 7 is a very bad prognosis.
A press statement from the Government Information Service stated that most of the COVID-19 deaths were unvaccinated people. However, it provided no breakdown on how many persons who died were vaccinated. 7 more COVID-related deaths were announced in the past 24 hours, which brings the total number to 12 since the start of the pandemic in Grenada in March 2020. Minister Steele explained that it can be ruled a COVID death even without a post-mortem.
The same way when somebody is run over by a vehicle or knocked down by a vehicle, you don't need to have an autopsy to prove that it was because of the vehicle or death that they died. That the body from the trauma of the vehicular accident or the body from the trauma of COVID-19 succumbs, and its weakest spot eventually becomes its failure spot. So yes, that is why with COVID-19, the information known worldwide, it is not necessary to go all the way to an autopsy, because you know that this is what has caused the trauma to result in whatever part of the body failing to cause hospitalization.
The deceased, all of whom had comorbidities, were confirmed cases of COVID-19, ranging in age from 26 to 85 years. The Ministry of Health has also confirmed that 5 of the deaths were among patients admitted to the General Hospital, with 1 death at the Princess Alice Hospital, the 7th person dying at home. Data provided by the Ministry of Health indicates that 4 of the deceased are females and 3 males. 4 of the deceased were residents of St. George, while the remaining 3 were from St. Andrew. The Ministry of Health continues to encourage Grenadians to get vaccinated, as this reduces the risk of severe diseases, hospitalization, and death attributed to COVID-19. They are also encouraging the population to follow the recommended COVID-19 protocols to safeguard themselves. Christelina John, GBN News.
And of course, we're looking at COVID-19, the evolving economic dynamics, and we have people from the business community this evening. But first, as a woman, Ms. Bayer, I know sometimes they say women take these things harder than men. As a Grenadian woman, the news that we have this evening, how have you been imbibing that?
It is a traumatizing news, because women have to think about their husbands, their children, and the community. Because everything that happens here affects the woman. You have to be, like I said, chief cook and bottle washer, and you better don't fall down. So
your device needs to be, you need to put the device back a little bit, because we're seeing half of your head. Right, let's see. Okay, all right, hold it. Back a little still. Right, and we probably need to get it propped up against, right, we could hold it there. Thanks. Okay. And don't move it. Right, go ahead.
Yes, women are, if a woman gets sick, she still have to tend to the household. Everybody's still looking at her. Women are the backbone in this country. And I think women should get up and encourage people to be vaccinated, to take care of themselves. And we're going to be taking care of the world. We are the people who caused this world to be what it is, populated or not. Women, I never see a man having a baby yet. All men, as big and as brave as they are, came from a woman.
Right. So, Mr. Archibald, you, I'm certain, have been looking at this for the past year. Dr. Terence Marichaud said we worked very hard to get where we've gotten to at this point. As an economist, we're looking at the evolving economic dynamics. What are your thoughts?
The consequences of what we're experiencing are very dire and very traumatic, as Merle said. And we are just, in my mind, beginning to feel the consequences of having to go through this COVID, this whole COVID disease, or whatever we want to call it. And there's going to be short-term consequences, and there are going to be long-term consequences. And we're going to be taking a long time to recover from those consequences. And some of the short-term economic or financial consequences are going to lead to the long-term consequences. And we're going to be talking about this 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the road.
Okay, nice synopsis. I'm certain that you're going to cut through some of that and dissect as we go along. So, Mr. Williams, you're on the outside looking in. You're thinking, good for you, Grenada, or no?
Well, I think Grenada is getting into its new wave, which is, as we're in Dominica, coming out of our new wave. As of our last numbers, we were at 651 active cases. And we are talking about from the ending of July, which was the 31st of July, the country basically had around 234 cases total since the beginning of COVID, with 0 deaths. And in the last 3 or 4 weeks, we have moved from that to 1,996 cases and 5 deaths. If you do the math, that's over an 8,000+% increase in COVID cases that really came from one super spreader event, which is our new wave. And we're still averaging about anywhere between 68 to 74 new cases per day. Now, the effect of that has been quite crippling on the domestic economy. For a small country, we cannot close down, but the disruption to businesses have been hard hit. Because every time somebody tests positive, you have to test everybody else, and then you have to shut down the place, you have to sanitize the place, and you have to try and reopen. And it's last week, for instance, every major bank in Dominica was closed because of COVID. And the largest credit union in the OECS is in Dominica, and its main branch was closed. And you're looking at just the National Bank and the major credit union, both of them have about 50,000 customers, and their main locations were closed for a week plus because of COVID in sanitize the entire place. And we found ourselves last week Friday on a month end with people having their salaries in the bank and nobody can get it out. ATMs had queues with 50, 60 people 6 feet apart waiting to get something out, and ATMs were running out of money before people could actually get their money out.
Let's just go back to something you said, Mr. Williams. If we could just go back on a point you made. You said you had no deaths, 0 deaths?
We had 0 deaths before July 31st. In the last 3 or 4 weeks, we've had 5 deaths.
Okay. So let me just ask Mr. Archibald to pick up on something you said. He said you cannot close down, but yet is there this self-closure, Mr. Archibald, based on what we're seeing from what he said and what we see happening in Grenada?
When I said close down, which was the part of a conversation we were having earlier on about closing the borders. And I'm saying in these little islands, you can't close the borders because you can try to officially, but people are going to get through by one means or the other. That was the conversation we were having. We had people slipping through from Trinidad. We had people slipping through from St. Vincent. And at that point, you think your borders are closed, but it's a little island. It's surrounded by sea. So it will be foolhardy to think that we can actually truly close the borders for nobody to come through. In the case of Dominica, Misha was talking earlier, and people just came over from Guadeloupe. We had people from St. Vincent, we had people from Trinidad, and Trinidad had people from Venezuela, and you had Venezuelans, as Merle said, walking on the streets. So while we can shut the airport, if we want to consider that closing the borders, it is not really closing the borders because people are going to get through.
Okay, so Michelle, in Dominica, you are referencing the largest credit union in the OECS having that challenge, the National Bank. And so there has been discussion about the need probably to have a lockdown. What is the situation like in Dominica? Is there a national lockdown or no?
No. The Prime Minister was very clear on that. He's not going to lock down the country for the behavior of a selfish few. People have to survive. We're up to seven quarantine centers in the north that the government controls and operates. The government has tested over 55,000 people in a country with just about 65 or 70,000. There's enough vaccination. There's enough tests. We're testing people in droves in the National Stadium, and it takes a couple hours. So the government has felt that it has put the necessary pillars in place for people, the urges for people to get vaccinated and protect themselves. But, you cannot, the age of shutting down countries for any extended period of time. I mean, we tried that last year, and all we succeeded in doing was crippling our economies, and we didn't even make a dent to COVID. So we have to get to the point where we understand that COVID is not a hurricane. It's not going to be over, and there's no recovery from COVID. COVID is here. And we have to learn to adjust and to do what we need to do in this new dispensation. calling on governments to shut down and keep people home and keep people without and asking for stimulus and so on. We're poor islands, and government can't support everybody on the island. People have to work, people have to go to school, people have to do what they need to do. The sooner we get on board with the fact that we are not going to avoid getting COVID, we have to survive COVID, then we will be able in the small economies to get to a curve that is flat enough that we can get into a new normal. The new normal isn't that COVID is never going to come. I think the world is quite settled now that, COVID is here to stay in its many variations. And so we as small island people have to understand that we cannot lock ourselves up from the rest of the world, and we cannot lock ourselves up from one another.
Ms. Bayer, do you agree that we should not lock down the country at this time?
No, we should not lock down the country. It is not good for us. It is not good for you, for me, or anybody. When we lock down, as Mr. Williams said, in a small country, nothing goes on. And we still can pay the bills, pay the people who we employ when we are not getting anything in here, and nothing is moving. So we have to do what everybody has to take responsibility for himself and his family, herself and her family. Do what is right, and we have to learn to live with the new normal.
Okay, so Ms. Archibald, do you agree that the country should not be placed under lockdown?
I agree the country should not be placed under lockdown. The fundamental issue here is not lockdown or not lockdown. The fundamental issue is our behavior. We have to take responsibility for our own behavior. We have to take responsibility for taking ourselves out of the situation to a level, as Michelle said, that we can live. If we don't follow the protocols, if we don't get vaccinated, we're not going to get out of this. So, I don't think the situation is whether you should lock down or not lock down at all. I think we have to take responsibility. And that is where, in my mind, that's where the issue lies. We are reluctant, if that's the right word, or avoiding the fact that you and every single person has to take responsibility for their behavior. Wearing the mask, social distancing, the vaccine, etc. That is the issue.
But Mr. Archibald, I can hear one of the songs in my head, How Many More Must Die? And I think the tagline was, before we set South Africa free. The question is, how many more must die before we get this under control? The school of thought within the health paradigm is that if you restrict movement, there is less chance of the virus being mutated. So how can you not support
why who restricts movement? We should restrict our own movement. I'm talking about obeying all the protocols, as I said earlier. Included in that is taking care of yourself and behaving in a certain manner. Look, I heard an argument that if you shut it down, no, we don't want to shut it down. The government doesn't want to shut it down because rich people don't want it shut down. And I had to lean back and say, I can't understand that argument. Everybody is going to suffer if we lock this country down. Let's start with the lowest income, the daily paid, etc. All of them have to go home if you shut the country down. Who's going to feed them? How are they going to feed themselves? This afternoon in a discussion, we mentioned the fact that it was mentioned that the salons and places like that are suffering because of what was done. And I agree, but everybody else will suffer, in particular the lower income people, because they are waiting to earn some money on a daily basis, and they will not be able to do that. And then we say the government must provide stimulus. So you have to allow people to earn a daily bread. You have to, as the Rastaman said, they have to eat a bread. And if you close the country down and stop all moving around, then what are we going to do?
So Michelle, in Dominica, right? Is it a case where whether we advocate for lockdown or do not advocate for lockdown, lockdown is here in its natural dispensation because the bank has been forced to close, the credit union has been forced to close. In Grenada, we see one of the malls here kind of look like a ghost town today because of forced closure because of exposure.
Well, listen, anytime you have a wave, the way that you flatten it is to limit movement. And we have to try and get this limitation of movement to the shortest possible time. The only way we are going to have surges are going to continue. We now know that whether you're vaccinated or not, you can get infected. But the restrictions are going to be a lot less if you have a larger portion, if you test a lot of people and you're able to pull the infected people out of circulation, so to speak, which is a strategy they used in Dominica, coupled with aggressive vaccination of a good amount of the population. And what you end up doing is that you end up limiting the time frame of the shutdowns or the restrictions that are there. We never really completely shut down, but we did have restrictions on movement. There were curfews in effect. There were weekends where you couldn't move on a Sunday or so on. But so all that is there to flatten the curve. What people have to understand is that this is not going to be over anytime soon, right? So you're going to have the surges. This is a respiratory illness. Everybody breathes, so it will spread. I think that is very clear. So the question now is not whether you lock down or you don't lock down, or whether you're vaccinated or you're not vaccinated. The question is whether you live or you die. And we as natural human beings have to do everything we can do to survive the illnesses that are put before us. And so one of the things that we have as a tool, fortunately, since this pandemic has started, is a vaccine. And we have a number of vaccines. And the empirical data has proven that people with vaccines are not dying in the numbers that people who are not vaccinated are dying. And so we have to take that to mean that if a significant portion of the population is vaccinated, then the incidences of high infection, stress on the medical system, stress on first responders will be less. And so economic activity can continue even if you're in the midst of the pandemic and if you're in the midst of a surge. I mean, we're still doing 71 cases per day, and the country is open back up to 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day now for almost all businesses.
Okay.
Because it's the management of the virus that is critical right now. It's not whether it's going to go away if you close down for 2 weeks. It's not going to go away. It's how we manage it.
You're holding to your point. And so on that very point, note, we take a commercial break and we'll be right back on Beyond the Headlines. We're looking at COVID-19, the evolving economic dynamics. Do stay with us.
Hi, darling. Are you still working on that article to help customers better understand their Grenlec bill?
Yes. Have a look. The left side shows the electricity rates and government charges. The middle has your present usage and 8-month usage history. And the right side shows all your charges.
What about the fuel and non-fuel charge?
Good question. The fuel charge is the cost of fuel to generate your electricity. The non-fuel charge is the cost of delivering electricity to your home and any other necessary services.
And VAT?
You pay 15% on the non-fuel portion of any usage over 99 units.
How much much is the environmental levy that Grenlec collects for Solid Waste Management Authority?
This charge on domestic customers is $5 or $10, depending on your usage. So, add the fuel, non-fuel, VAT, and the environmental levy, and that's your electricity bill.
Grenlec, energizing our Grenada.
Introducing Color by Seasons. 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 Color by Seasons.
When a loved one passes on, we all need the comfort, support, and guidance of a trusted friend. You can rely on LaCour Brothers Funeral Home. We provide a personalized professional service that exceeds all expectations. Our dedicated staff responds to your every need with the greatest detail, ensuring affordability with a variety of options. Our upgraded state-of-the-art facilities, spacious air-conditioned chapel with live internet streaming, a modern, environmentally safe crematorium, the only of its kind on island, private viewing spaces, large on-site repast center, a modern transportation fleet. Join our burial society today and make personalized arrangements for that final moment as you prepare to enter your loved one into eternal rest. Visit or call LaCour Brothers Funeral Home and select a package that brings added comfort to the entire family. LaCour Brothers Funeral Home and Burial Society, continuing a tradition of excellence.
Are you looking for quality herbs and herbal supplements? Or are you thinking about having a complete body cleanse to jumpstart your health? Then no need to look further. Visit Nirvana Natural Health Clinic, Detox Center, and Natural Health Store. We carry a wide range of herbal products for kidney and gallstone cleansing, male sexual enhancement formulas, asthma and sinusitis, gas and bloating, acid reflux, constipation, arthritis, imbalanced hormones, female health issues, liver cleansing, weight loss, and so much more. Also available, colonic irrigation, holistic health consultations, essential oils, and diffusers. Look out for our online natural health store coming soon. Call 231-6642 418-7115 or 449-7753 to find out about our delivery options or to book an appointment. Visit us at Belmont St. George's, close to the Foliage, Monday to Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Nirvana Natural Health Clinic. Detox your way to health.
Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. This evening we're looking at COVID-19, the emerging economic dynamic, and we have three dynamic people with us this evening. And coincidentally, the three M's, I just realized we have Merle Bayer, Michelle Williams, and Michael Archibald. The three M's, the powerhouses. So we've been looking at the pros and the cons of a lockdown. Ms. Bayer, nobody on the panel is supporting a lockdown, but on the weekend there are the no movement days. What difference does that make, Ms. Bayer?
Well, that day should give us time to reflect. It should tell us that we don't have to be in the party. We don't have to go to whatever to live. We should sit down and curb the spread of this disease. It should be a time of reflection.
Okay. So, Mr. Williams, do you have no movement days in Dominica as well?
We had Sundays, which were no movement days in the peak of the pandemic, about the middle of August. And we've had curfews from 6 p.m. In the evening, which has just been lifted this past weekend. So yes, there are and there were ways that movement was restricted. They did mandate in the protocols that certain businesses not open, like barbershops and bars and restaurants could only do takeout, no night gyms, and so on. So, the protocols are geared towards keeping people from congregating, and that's a tough premise because everything before COVID, humanity was built on a community basis. We lived together, we played together, we partied together, we went to school together, church together, we shopped together, and we rode on buses together. And yes, it's tiring and it's frustrating to now find yourself in a situation where rules are trying to pull you apart. But we have to understand, if we have a surge like we have had, this past month, where it seems like everybody is getting infected and everybody's testing positive, it starts to cripple economic activity, whether you have a lockdown or not, because the country has to produce. People have to work to earn an income, as Mr. Archibald said. Food has to come in. These things have to function. It had gotten so bad on our end that the government had one lockdown weekend really just for first responders and frontline workers to rest because they were tired. Because the surge was astronomical and everybody was getting burned out. Because in a small island, you have limited resources, you have limited nurses, you have limited doctors, and this is 24-hour care. And when you when you have to take care of 600-700 people all at one time for incubation periods of 14 days, which is half a month, it tends to be very tiring on the 1,000 little nurses that we have. So, and you still have people that are sick with non-COVID illnesses. Dialysis still has to get done, and you have people with cancer and surgery still have to get done, and everything else the world had to deal with and we had to deal with still going on. COVID is an extra. And so that kind of push on the system is what is going to break our systems. And it's unfortunate that something that soap and water can kill is causing so much havoc around the world. And it's simply because people want to do what they want to do. That is the freedom that we have always had, except now it has the potential to kill you and everybody around you. And we have to wake up to that new dispensation and ask ourselves some tough questions. I mean, if you are not sick and you are vaccinated and you are at work and you are following the protocols, but you have to get laid off for 2 weeks because 7 people on your job now is positive and the place has to close down and has to get sanitized and you have to be without pay. How fair is that? Nobody says that everybody has to be vaccinated, but you do have to behave yourself in a different way because the world is different now and it's not going to change. And I think that is the message that people has to be resonated more. We spend too much time talking about immunology and vaccination like they're scientists, and not about the nuts and bolts of the thing, which is we all have to go to work. We all have to earn an income at the end of the month. We all have to pay rent, and we all have to do what we need to do. And if we're unable to do that, whether the government says we're unable to do that or 7 people on the job get sick, we're still unable to do it.
And I think that's a very important point that which we can segue to comments made by the governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Grenada's own Timothy and Twine. On July the 26th, the ECCB had a forum, and he was talking about the very said things that you are mentioning. So let's listen to that report, look back at it, and then we come back and continue the discussions.
tourism sector. Using the return of cruise ships as an example, Governor Antoine says the concern that their return is not yet possible has a direct correlation to the level of vaccination in the various islands.
Well, unless the small man is vaccinated, that is going to be a challenge, because you do not want to expose the so-called small man to being infected and to becoming sick and possibly losing his or her life.
Speaking at the 99th meeting of the ECCB Monetary Council, Antoine lamented the predicament faced by regional governments who have a first responsibility to protect their citizens.
Help our governments by taking the responsibility to vaccinate. I make that personal appeal to you, all of you, because if not, we put you in harm's way, and that's what we're trying to avoid. So please help us to help you. We have to do this together, all right? Because we cannot close indefinitely, but if we open and people are not protected, you're going to have difficulties.
The ECCB governor says people must be mindful that COVID-19 cases will rise if taxi drivers and others who come in direct contact with cruise ship passengers are not vaccinated.
And then people will say we need to close and lock down. And I am no fan of lockdowns. Lockdowns are necessary sometimes, but I'm no fan because of what it does for businesses, because of the impact it has on. It's a blunt instrument, to be quite honest. And it's particularly punishing for those who've done the right thing.
Governor Antoine appealed to nationals in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union to get vaccinated as a means of kickstarting stalled economic activities. I am Gerard Joseph for GBN News.
So, Mr. Archibald, the point there, a blunt instrument against those who've done the right thing, is punishment for those who've done the right thing. And coming out of what we saw the second weekend in August, you think that Mr. Antoine is correct in his summation?
I think he is. I think he is correct. I think Mr. Williams is correct, and I think Ms. Mulba is correct. Let's look at this thing. For you to survive, you have to eat. For you to eat, you have to be working. Either you're employed somewhere, or you have your own business, or you're a farmer or a fisherman or whatever it is. When we lock the place down, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't earn a living. If I can't earn a living, I can't feed my wife, I can't feed my children. So whatever we're doing, we have to bear in mind that people have to earn a living, number one. What is very unfair is for some people who have followed the protocols, who have got the vaccine, etc., and doing all the other things. And then you have people who are not following the protocols. They get sick because they get sick in far greater numbers than somebody who has had a vaccine or who is following the protocols. They get sick. And as both the governor said and Mr. Williams said, they get sick and they stay away from work. The business is forced to close. So you know who have followed it, who have done what is supposed to be, are now being held penalized, being held ransom, and being forced out of a job because some people decide they're not following the protocol. When you talk like that, people get angry. But we all have a personal responsibility to do the right thing in the face of COVID. And I just want to stress that point. If 5 of us are working in a business place and 3 have done the right thing and 2 decide they're not doing it and they get sick and the business place has to close, how that could be fair on the 3 people who did the right thing?
All right, trying to balance the equation there, and I don't think, Mr. Williams, is there any way you could balance that equation?
The equation is going to have to balance itself. You know, you get to the point. I mean, people can get away with that now because we still have low levels of vaccination. When you get at higher levels of vaccination, and I know a lot of governments have shied away from vaccine mandates and it's not politically kosher to talk about. But the reality is that civil society is going to put in the same restrictions that the governments are afraid to do. And people are going to tell you that if you don't have a negative antigen test or you're not vaccinated, you can't come to my house. And we're starting to see that in Dominica. Even myself, I told my housekeeper, so, unfortunately, you're going to show me you're vaccinated for you to run around my house and wash dishes and sweep floors and go in my kids' room and everything. Because you can come in with COVID, and, she's been with me for a while. Businesses here are starting to put rules in place that if you're unvaccinated, you have to show a negative antigen test to be put on the roster every fortnight. And the day that you take to go get the test, you don't get paid for it too. And that is the reality that is going to come more and more. You're starting to see the U.S. Embassy has put in things. You had to be vaccinated to get an immigrant visa now. Even if we watch CNN and people in their protests and thing in America, they have put the restrictions on us already. You can get all the green card you want, but you're not going without your vaccine. So we will see civil society put those rules in place. My problem with that is going to take a lot of time, and our small economies are too fragile to wait for civil society to be bold enough to do it. When we as a people can have national conversations and decide what we want to do as a people, we don't need a referendum to do what is right. We just have to do it.
So let me ask Ms. Bayo, do you agree with vaccine mandates? And I'm asking that against the backdrop of the press statement that came from the government today. Health officials have also confirmed that the majority of deaths being recorded is among the unvaccinated. Please note they said the majority, which means that there is a figure somewhere that includes vaccinated people among the list of the dead. Do you support vaccine mandates, Ms. Bayo?
I don't really support vaccine mandate, but I am appealing to the conscience of everybody, especially the women who have propagated the word, to speak to their people, to look inside them, to look into their conscience and ask, why don't we have rubella? Why don't we have measles, smallpox, and all these things that we were vaccinated against in our childhood? Why don't we have it now? Because we were vaccinated. They did it in a way that they came to school and you took it. You asked no question and you got it. But now that we are big, in youth, they make you do things, and in age you understand why. Now we understand why. So while I don't agree with forcing people to do what they want, I am appealing to the inner side of people, to the good side of people, to the conscious side of people, to get on the program and get vaccine.
So we have hit the vaccination button, which is a very thorny subject. We heard the teachers union last week saying no to vaccine mandates among teachers. In the US, that's a big issue now. We had a panelist last week who's a teacher and said that it was a thorny issue in New York because they were issued mandates by which they should get vaccinated, and I think they're taking it up with the board this week. Let's go to Barbados, where Prime Minister Mia Mottley has been weighing in on the discussion, the whole issue of vaccinations, and urging her countrymen and women to get vaccinated. She's noticed that it's been a divisive issue as well.
There are many who are doubtful, and we have to respect that. But we have to have the conversations as to what underpins that doubt or that sense of hesitancy. For us, we saw it change in this country, where at the beginning of this particular last outbreak, when we did the start of Operation Seek and Save, 55% of Barbadians being interviewed initially expressed hesitancy and concern about whether they would take a vaccine, and 45% said yes. Within 2 weeks, that started to change, and we saw a complete difference in the trajectory of interest in the vaccines. Within a month of that initial position, we saw and had data that suggested that 79.8%, almost 8 out of every 10 Barbadians, said, give me the vaccine, we want it.
So, Merle, what do you think Mia Mottley is doing correctly to have had that drastic turnaround in acceptance?
Well, I think it's the same thing, appealing to the people in the right way. I think, let me retract. In the beginning, the vaccine came out. I don't think the government or the people who had to sell it to the public did it in the right way. That's why the resistance came up. They said, first of all, that you have to be a certain age to get it, that they didn't want certain age people to get it, and they didn't know is everybody, they didn't want this and they didn't want that. So it turned off a lot of people. But I think they had it wrong. But they don't have the guts to come and say, we were wrong, and this is what it was. We will never hear that. But what we are hearing now is that it will not prevent you from getting it. It will prevent you from getting it at the highest level. So if at all you have to get it, you know your survival chance is good if you are vaccinated. That's the message they should be giving us.
So, Mr. Archibald, you look at what the report given by Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Mottley, and we look at the struggle still in Grenada to get people to be convinced that this is something that they should do. And where's your head leaning?
Frankly, I think there has been an increase in the number of people who are taking the vaccine. And from my perspective, the only thing that has changed is the amount of people getting sick, testing positive, and dying. So I think it's reality is what is changing people's minds, and reality is making people take a check and say, listen, I need to protect myself. And that is the change that is taking place in my mind. And as a result of that, more people are moving towards taking the vaccine. And I think the whole thing is going to become moot, because Mr. Williams talked about civil society moving in a particular direction. I believe civil society is going to move in that direction. I believe governments are going to move in that direction. They're not going to mandate it, pass a law to mandate it. But you're going to hear business houses saying, you can't enter my business place, you can't work here. You're going to have householders saying, you can't come to my place, you can't work here. And eventually, it's going to spread through the entire society, and people are going to sit back and say, listen, I have to live here. And if I have to live here, I have to work. And therefore, they will take it. So I don't think it wouldn't be a law passed mandating it. But the circumstances are going to evolve. And you will find that if you're going to live a half-decent life among everybody else and all the people who are taking it, you're going to have to take the vaccine.
But Mr. Archibald, how do you balance that against that situation we've had at St. George's University? On Saturday, the university issued a statement saying that they have been doing mass testing. They've had 15 confirmed cases. That was up until changed. So some people are questioning, well, St. George's University said only vaccinated people on our campus. We had the standoff with the employees. Some of them are still not able to go back to work. So how do you balance that, where it seems the impression was that you get vaccinated, that's a secure bubble, but yet we have cases cropping up there?
Well, you remember they said it does not prevent everybody from getting it. You can still get it, even though you're vaccinated. What it says is that you won't get as sick and you probably will not die. So yes, people can still get it even though they're vaccinated. And some people got it done at SGU. I have no, that's not a problem for me.
But I'm asking from the point of view, Ms. Bayer was talking about the way the message was sold. And so I'm trying to balance that again. So if you're trying to sell this message, are you a good salesman at selling this? And I don't mean you, Michael Ponty.
I know. You know what? Every time I hear that, you know what goes through my mind? All you have to do is turn on the television. I mean, how much selling do you need? All you have to do is turn on the television and look at what is happening in every country in the world. That's all you have to do. Do you have to be spoon-fed everything? You just turn on the television. Look at Trinidad, look at Dominica, look at St. Lucia, look at England, and then you sit back and say, listen, I got to do something about this. I got to protect myself.
Okay.
But I think,
Michelle, go ahead. Go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, I think people have gotten carried away with what mandates actually mean. The government is not going to put people on the side of the road to stick you with a needle as you pass because they say everybody should get a vaccine. And so we need to just chill out a little bit. There are mandates all over the place. You go to school there's a mandate that says that you have to wear a uniform. You go to work, there's a mandate that says that you have to wear the uniform and you have to come to work at a certain time and you have to behave in a certain way to maintain your employment. So the word mandate has become a dirty word now, as if, this is some Gestapo type of activity that we're talking about, where people are going to oppress people to do something that they don't want to do. And the reality is that we live in societies where we are subject to various mandates for us to get through our day all the time. And not everything has to be a statute. It has to be an operation of law. It has to be an operation of practice. It has to be an acceptable behavior. There is a mandate that you cannot talk loud in a church. Otherwise, they will ask you to leave. And we have accepted all those things. As Ms. Baez said, when your child had to go to school, you had to bring your vaccination card to show the principal and the teacher that you had all your shots to come in, because it was a communal area and you did not want measles or anything to spread for a primary school. And we adhered to those things. This is new. This is fresh. People don't know about it. And so people are always hesitant when authorities tell them that they should do something, even if it's for their own benefit. But I think we just need to take down the fright down a notch and realize that if this is not going to go away, it's really going to become like any other mandate that we have to deal with. And I think we will be fine. I don't think we should be scared that anybody's going to stick us with a needle if you pass on the street. I don't think that's what the mandate means.
Michelle, you're cracking me up. You used the word Gestapo and I just couldn't get it.
All I like is sticking with a needle on the street when you pass.
Come here, Miss Bayer. You have some needles you want to stick anybody with?
No.
On a serious note, though, Ms. Bayer, so I did promise people that we'd tell them a little bit about what you're involved in. You're sitting there just quietly, but you play a very essential role, especially at all times, but especially at this time. Tell Grenada what you do and what is the role you play in all of this.
We manufacture and sell industrial and medical gases.
And
oxygen is in good supply now. It is in demand. I want to assure the Grenada public that we have enough oxygen to supply the hospital's need in the foreseeable future. There is no need to panic.
So
that is great news.
That is great news. So to put it in context,
no need to panic.
Ms. Bayer is the entrepreneur, business executive, business leader, manager of L&M Investments. You might see the sign on the Morris Bishop Highway as you're driving by and never think anything important is going on there. But you want to repeat that for people who are trying to come to terms with what that means again, Ms. Bayer, what it is you do and how you support the General Hospital?
I supply all the medical gas that they need. The hospital in St. George's, the private hospitals in Grenada like SAMS and so, the hospital in Maribor, the hospital in Carriacou, the patients who are at home and have respiratory problems. And I'm just there.
And I
didn't think when I started my business it would have been that. I thought it was just to sell gas for the people who weld in, but I'm welding other things.
She's welding lives. Mr. Archibald and Mr. Williams.
And I say it in the Grenadian language, I'm welding the people. Let's leave it at that.
Let's leave it at that and take a commercial break.
Welding the people.
When we come back, we'll take your calls and we'd also see what's happening on our social media feeds. This is Beyond the Headlines. We'll be back after this break. Just get ready to call 435-2041.
you looking for quality herbs and herbal supplements, or are you thinking about having a complete body cleanse to jumpstart your health? Then no need to look further. Visit Nirvana Natural Health Clinic, Detox Center, and Natural Health Store. We carry a wide range of herbal products for kidney and gallstone cleansing, male sexual enhancement formulas, asthma and sinusitis, gas and bloating, acid reflux, constipation, arthritis, imbalanced hormones, female health issues, liver cleansing, weight loss, and so much more. Also available, colonic irrigation, holistic health consultations, essential oils, and diffusers. Look out for our online natural health store coming soon. Call 231-6642 418-7115 or 449-7753 to find out about our delivery options or to book an appointment. Visit us at Belmont St. George's, close to the Fallage, Monday to Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Nirvana Natural Health Clinic. Detox your way to health.
Total is one of the world's largest oil companies with a top quality line of lubricants. Total Lubricants has a full product line from passenger cars, motorcycle, heavy industrial equipment, mining, trucking, agriculture, and manufacturing machines and vehicles. Total Lubricants, winning championships in motorsports, including Formula One and World Rally Championships. Total Lubricants are available at all Rubis service stations, leading automotive shops, and distributed by Huggins.
And Valley Pharmacy offers both wholesale and retail pharmaceutical and over-the-counter products. We have the most competitive and affordable prices. We are the agents for Vit Plus multivitamin for healthy everyday lifestyle and Sonatogen powder. Hills and Valley Pharmacy supplies the best quality, name brand clinical products such as Rescue Oil, Bio Oil, Neutrogena, Aveeno, and Clarisil. We offer the most convenient opening hours. Our telephone numbers are 435-6904 or 6903. Remember, at Hills and Valley Pharmacy, your health is our business. We care.
Now open Hills and Valley Medicare Center, your one-stop for medical supplies, massage therapy, physiotherapy, and an in-house physician. At Hills and Valley, your health is our business.
Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. This evening we're looking at the evolving economic dynamics of COVID-19, and I have the three M's with me, Merle, Michael, and Michelle. Merle Bayer, she is an entrepreneur. She runs L&M Investments. She manufactures industrial gas. She supplies the hospitals on the island with oxygen. We have Mr. Michael Archibald. He is the former banker, retired banker, manager of what I knew as a child as the National Commercial Bank. Today in its new dispensation, you know it as Republic Bank, I believe. And we have Mr. Michelle Williams. He's not missing his shell. He's in Dominica and he's a business advisor. And I'm so happy to have them with us this evening. We've been looking at the whole issue of vaccination. There's been vaccine hesitancy. We listened to an insert from Barbados Prime Minister, the Honorable Mia Motley, talking about how her country was able to see a 100% turnaround, a 360 turnaround in people's acceptance of vaccines. The opposition leader in Grenada, the Honorable Tobias Clement, on Friday in Parliament, he was also talking about the whole issue of vaccination, urging people to access one of the two vaccines that are available. Let's look at one of those inserts before we continue the discussion. The Honorable Tobias Clement speaking in Parliament on Friday.
And this is because of what they call the Tuskegee experiment from the 1930s to the 1970s, and the way African Americans were treated. I don't even think Japan is up in the teens in terms of vaccination because of the history. Mr. Speaker, we have a lot of education. And while we educate our people, we must be mindful that there are other avenues of education. Vaccine hesitancy is not merely, okay, you are stupid so you're not taking the vaccine. But there are legitimate reasons why people are hesitant. And we have to educate them as to the effects and how they can overcome that hesitancy.
And the Minister of Health, the Honorable Nicholas Steele, he has on every occasion used every opportunity that he could to implore people to access the vaccines. And in that second incident that we'll have from the opposition leader, he's also urging people to access the vaccines.
We see a situation now that some people are thinking it doesn't matter if I get the vaccine or not, you'll still get it. But the question is, the underlying question is that you will build up immunity to fight against COVID-19 when you take the vaccine. So you may not get as sick as if you did not have it, or you may not get as sick onto hospitalization, or you may not get as sick onto death. And the same scientists will tell you, the frightening thing about it, the longer we stay to get to that point, is the more dangerous that virus can become. There is one word that we did not speak in this house. There is what is also known as a super virus. And I pray to God, Mr. Speaker, I pray to God that COVID-19 do not come to the point of a super virus.
And there we have it from the opposition leader, the Honorable Tobias Clement. I believe we have a caller on the line. Caller, we are happy to welcome you as our first contributor this evening.
Good evening, Ms. Campbell, Mrs. Campbell, and to your three guests on the program, the three M's. I am listening to your program with mixed feelings. Mixed because it is indeed sad that COVID is here, and it seems as if it's going to be here with us for a long time. No, as a small business person, I believe that one of the first people to get hit hard when a situation like that arises are the small business people, the vendors. No, I have taken a decision to get vaxxed because I consider myself to be a frontline worker, serving the public with vegetables and providing uniforms. You don't know who is coming and you don't know what they're coming with. I also have a daughter that is looking forward to her 18th birthday. I really would like to be a part of that and to celebrate with her. At the time, we only had one vaccine. So I would say I took it for me and for the family. And for those who I'm confronted with, even on the buses, because you travel on the bus, you don't know who is sitting next to you. And I think it is an opportune time for us officials, ministry personnel, those who are qualified enough with the information to educate those among us that are not so fortunate. Too many times you hear people talking about things that are not real. For example, only today you hear people talking about, if people are having the cold and they're saying it's COVID. And it's real. When I hear 7 today, it is just too much. And you don't know who the next person is. So I just want to beg of us Grenadians to please follow the protocols. Let's do the right thing and see your neighbor as you, and just think of the next person beside you like you don't know what they're carrying. And you need to protect ourselves, our loved ones, and just to be there for our children and the health workers. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you so much for that contribution. Very valuable indeed. Anybody on the panel want to weigh in on this at this time?
Well said. Well, very well said.
I agree, and the part that particularly sticks with me is when she said that she is a frontline worker. I know we have been picking up our nurses and our doctors and our medical professionals as frontline workers, and they are, and they're definitely the heroes in this pandemic. But we also have to look at anybody that interfaces with a customer. Whether it's a bus driver, whether it's a foot boy on a bus, whether it's a street vendor, a cashier, a clerk, anytime you deal with the public in any way, you're frontline. And you have a responsibility to protect yourselves and the people in front of you. And so when we break it down to that granular level, unless you're locked up on a mountain somewhere by yourself, you're really in the front line of this fight, and you have to help everybody, and you have to help yourself as well. So I was particularly struck when she said that, you know, she's a frontline worker, because I agree with that.
All right, involved in frontline service in one form or another. So, Merle, as we look at this whole evolving economic dynamic, what is the dollar and cents impact of this on our health sector? I'm certain you've seen an increase in demand for oxygen.
I often wonder where they get the money to pay for the gap. But nothing is free. Nothing is given to anybody. I have to put out my resources to get the gas. And I honestly wonder where government gets the money to pay for the gas.
Michelle,
and
Dominica,
it is increasing. It is increasing by the moment.
Yeah. It is a case where Ms. Bayer is seeing the dollar and cents, and she's seeing that graph going up in terms of the cost. In Dominica, certain you're looking at the economics of providing healthcare in this very challenging period as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, this last wave has been quite expensive. Like I said, the government is up to 7 COVID quarantine facilities that it is trying to manage, with over 600 people. It has to feed these people 3 times a day. It has to provide medical services to these people 3 times a day. And more importantly, these people have no access to visitors or friends and family to bring anything to them. So it's all on the government's purse. And that money has to come from somewhere. And you have in a situation where the pandemic in general has depressed government revenues by almost 30 or 40% and has contracted the real economy almost by the same amount. We are finding ourselves in a situation where to keep these economies going, we are ballooning debt to do that, both on the public sector and on the private sector. And we're going to find ourselves in a situation where we just cannot do it much longer. I mean, there is no friendly governments out there that can pick up, the tab. This is not a hurricane. I mean, everybody has their own stress. And so you find yourself in a situation where the economy has contracted, tax revenue has contracted, but the government expenditure is rising because it has to finance the health of the people. And, it cannot pass that on in taxes because, small businesses are struggling as well. So, we're going to find ourselves as this drag on that other areas that needs that sort of input, like education and innovation and small business development, those things are going to get sacrificed at the expense of healthcare. If we, the people, don't, step up and understand that, everything has a cost and nothing is free. And, I always advocate against this stimulus thing because stimulus works when there is an end to the crisis. And we don't see an end there. So, this is not stimulating. We have to learn to produce and to live in this new dispensation. Otherwise, we're going to bankrupt our own country.
So, Mr. Ajabal, I smile again. He's just cracking us up this evening. I could hear somebody saying, don't go there. Don't talk about the people's stimulus, please. Don't go there. We have a caller on the line. Caller, good evening.
Good evening, Madam Campbell and your esteemed guests. Kudos to the gentleman from Dominica. I want to compliment him on his innovative. Also, Mr. Archibald, for the input in the whole financial sector, and of course, Ms. Mulbayer, the flagship of excellent work in how women would mandate their responsibility and carry it out with holding their heads high. But my question is, what is your take on the fact that we still have frontline workers having to come out to work, and yet still daycares are closed? My question is, the daycare is a very dynamic business, and if you're asking frontline workers to come out, then you close the daycare. How does that fit in the whole scheme of things? Thank you.
Ms. Bai, you want to answer that one?
Yes, that's where the mother is. The mother have to find somewhere to push that little baby. Whether the person who she's going to put it with is vaccinated or not, that is not taking place now. She have to find somewhere to leave that baby to go to work. So you could imagine what's going on in her head when she gone to work. And what should be going on in our heads when we ask frontline people with children and the daycare is closed. So it's like a never-ending story. Every action has a reaction.
It's the ripple effect.
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to cross to Ms. Archibald, but I'm getting a signal that we have another caller. Caller, good evening. Yes, good evening. It's great to have you with us. All right, we seem to have some interference on the line. Mr. Archibald, you wanted to chime in on that?
Not particularly. I think Merle did a good answer, but let me just add this. This insidious beast that we call COVID is impacting us on so many ways, in so many different ways, and all of them are negative. The impact is everywhere, and there's no straightforward answer. There's no rule book that can be followed. And we all have to find our ways to deal with the situation. That is why I keep coming back to the personal responsibility that everybody has in this thing. Mr. Williams talked about some of the economic and financial impact. I think we need to talk about that some more. Money to the economy is like blood in your body. Without the blood in your body, you will die. Without money circulating in the economy. And how does money circulate? All these people are going home. More and more people are going home. So they have no income. They can't spend money. That money is not circulating anymore. The small business are being hurt very, very badly. The small business sector is probably the most important sector in the entire economy. That is where you get a lot of your new employment, the new innovations, the new ideas coming from. And they are hurting badly. You look at the tourism sector. You look at agriculture. I mean, we could go on and on and on. Everybody is hurting. And this thing, unless we come together in how we, as a community, as a people, deal with this COVID, and I'm coming back particularly to the protocols and the vaccine, we are going to be in this thing for years and years to come. It is not going away. And that is why you hesitate when you say, lock the whole place down. Lock the whole place down is not going to solve it if we continue behaving how we're behaving. And it is not just impacting one level, rich people or middle-income people or low-income people. It's impacting everybody. And unfortunately, it impacts on the low-income people first, because they're the first set to go home, because most of them are daily paid. And when you shut a store for whatever reason, either because the government says to shut it or because somebody is sick and they have to close and shut it, then everybody inside is up, and so on and so forth and so forth. And we have to find a way to get together on this matter. You still see people not obeying the mandates. Let's forget the vaccine for the moment, because it's such a touchy subject. But the mandates are common sense mandates, because this thing is spread from person to person to person. And that's the one I'm having personally the most difficulty with when I walk the streets.
But Mr. Archibald, you keep talking about So you say it's common sense, and we talk about some touchy issues. Mandates, right?
The vaccine is a touchy subject, I said, and you can't, that's not the one I meant. I said the mandate, the one who will wear a mask. To me, that's common sense.
But just let's look, for instance, at something that has caused a lot of waves and ripples across Grenada in recent weeks. The carnival that should not have been, and media houses being blamed for promoting carnival. That's a whole different debate all by itself that we won't get into tonight. But today, the New York Post, I don't know if you saw that article, the New York Post was talking about I'm trying to see, there was a U word, but anyway, there should not have been any Labor Day celebrations, but there was this photograph, front page, the New York Post, a Grenadian flag.
Jab, jab.
Jab, jab.
I'm not going to get into it because it's a touchy subject, but let me just say this. The evidence shows, all the medical people have said, that when crowds get together, it is dangerous in the COVID situation. Mass gatherings is dangerous. Parties are dangerous. That's what the evidence says. So you take it from there.
You're leaving that horn hanging. We have a caller on the line that probably will take that off the line. Caller, good evening. Hello, are you there?
Yeah, good evening. I'd like to make a contribution. Good evening to you and the panelists.
Sure.
Now, they were speaking about concerning the lockdown. Now, if we go back to last year, every country in this world that the virus spread, they stopped the spread by locking down. Now, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, she got one case in New Zealand after 6 months. New Zealand have about 5 million persons. One case after 6 months, she locked down New Zealand. I guess the economy of New Zealand is no more. It's destroyed. Because if you lock down for 2 or 3 weeks, it will affect all business. Now your panelists, they are only speaking as, in my opinion, with a capitalist mentality. The capitalist mentality is all about money. It's not about livelihood and life of people. The people's lives don't matter. It's all about money, money, money. Now, if you think about it, the decision that has been made with the quarantine from the 14 days to the 2 days is not scientifically driven. It is monetary driven. It's driven by money. Hence the reason we are where we is today. By that 2 days locking down, the 2 days quarantine period, instead of the 7 days or the 14 days, driven by money. So money is where have us where we is today. Now I tell you, you all discussed something about the Bajan Prime Minister. Now, she said earlier that she's not in favor of mandatory vaccination. You know why she got, in my opinion, why she got such good response from the Bajan people? She has been honest with the people. That the people see the honesty in her by not mandating it on the people. Our government, they're doing the identical opposite. But what they're doing, they're pushing it on the business community. They don't want to come in front and actually mandate it on the people. Because you know why? Election is just a few months to come. Now, if it wasn't for that election, we would have mandatory vaccination in this country. Now, concerning the vaccination...
Thank you so much, caller, for that. We're coming close to wrap-up time, and we value your contribution. Michelle, you want to answer anything that was just said?
I mean, you know, it's not entirely money-driven, but...
You're a capitalist, aren't you?
You cannot escape the reality of the fact that we earn our living, yeah? And, you know, the proponents of lockdown, yes, you can stop the spread by locking down, that has to work. It worked last year. It works in certain degrees, and there will always be certain amounts of restrictions. What we're talking about is complete lockdown. And so when you have a complete lockdown, what you expect is the government to support you during that period of time, because you're unable to support yourself. And you know, I guess the Barbados Prime Minister is much better in terms of her delivery. But there was a time in that surge when you could only go to the supermarket based on your last name on a certain day. And that is as strict as it gets, in a way, that you can only go to the bank on a certain day based on the alphabet in your last name, and you would only do it in a few hours. So, you know, governments will do what they have to do to save lives, yes? And the restrictions, I've seen the restrictions across the Caribbean, from light in Antigua to very strict in Barbados, because it's only 295 square miles and they have almost 300,000 people. They cannot socially distance in that country to the extent that probably Grenada or Dominica can do. And so different countries have their different dynamic, and they will address it in different ways. But the reality of the situation is everything has to come back to getting people back to their normal livelihoods as quickly as possible. Somebody has to support you when you're home. And that is the reality. I mean, Grenada doesn't grow all its food. There's an import bill. Somebody has to import the food and somebody has to pay for it. And that has to come from somewhere. Grenada doesn't print its own money. Yes, New Zealand has acted possibly the far end of the scale because they can afford to. You know, they're much more digitized. They have much more depth and breadth of their financial system than we do. I mean, we still have to get up and go to work at 8 o'clock in the morning and leave at 4. So all those have to be taken into effect in the societies when we want to use those global comparisons. You know, Biden can print $1 trillion. I don't think the governor of the central bank can try that even if he wanted to. So we have our own limitations that we have, that we just cannot do the things that other people do the way that they do it, because we don't have $1 billion, we don't have $1 billion economy that Barbados has in the OECS. They are able to do certain things and to pay for certain things that the other small islands cannot do realistically. So, you know, I just want to put, you know, that in perspective. The politics thing, I ain't business in that. So.
We don't go there. We have a caller. We'll try to squeeze in one last caller for the evening as we get ready to wrap it up. Caller, good evening. Hello. All right, so unfortunately we won't be able to accommodate that caller because they seem to have a lot of static on the phone. We're getting ready to wrap it up with the 3 M's this evening, Michelle, Merle, and Michael. We have been looking at the evolving economic dynamics of COVID-19, just so that I can squeeze a contribution in here from one of our panelists. Simply put, we must think of ourselves as our brother's keeper and do what we can to stem the spread of the virus. That means getting vaccinated. I listened to the experts on your program and did my due diligence. Another person says the Department of Education workers in the Brooklyn, in the New York area, are mandated to get vaccinated. Currently, those who are unvaccinated may be required to use up days in CAR, which means cumulative absence reserve. Once days are used up, they'll be taken off the payroll. Those without days will be taken off payroll immediately. The union says it will fight that stipulation. So that's an update coming out of New York. It was something we addressed on last week's edition of Beyond the Headlines as we looked at what should have been the reopening of schools. We looked at COVID and the education system. This week we're wrapping up our discussions on the evolving economic dynamics. And Ms. Bayer, we're giving you the first bite of tonight's closing comments.
Oh, I want to say, I am speaking as a mother, I'm speaking as a wife, I'm speaking as a sister, I'm speaking as an aunt. We are the people who hold the cradle. We are the propagators of the world. Let us set an example. Let us speak to those who we can and ask them to do the right thing so that we will soon get back to whatever level of normalcy that we can and fight this disease once and for all.
Great. Mr. Archibald, your closing thoughts this evening?
I close by saying that I have no apologies whatsoever for the remarks that I made about money and my appreciation for and respect for the way money circulates in an economy and how important that is. Because without that money, none of us can live. The second comment I want to make is that it is up to us, really. It is up to us. We have to take personal responsibility for the outcome of this COVID disease and how long it stays with us and the impact it has on our economy. It is not anybody else, it is us. And until we appreciate that and start to act accordingly, we will not see much improvement in the situation.
And Mr. Michelle Williams out of Dominica, the closing thoughts from you this evening. Ms. Bayer, by the way, you disappear. All we're seeing is your roof. Ms. Bayer, let me just ask you to fix that quickly, Ms. Bayer. All we're seeing is your roof. Thanks for reappearing. You need to fix that further. Right. Go ahead, Mr. Williams.
I'm just happy that we are, we're, as a society, we're mature enough to have conversations about what is best for us. 100 years ago, when the Spanish flu came out, that killed about 50 million people in 2 years. There was no discussion about vaccine because there was not the technology to have it done by that time. And people still had to wear masks and they still had to social distance. I think a year ago when this virus came out and there was no hope for any possible vaccine, and we didn't know what it was, we didn't know how it spread, we didn't know whether it was going to come. There really was just fear and not the opportunity for realistic conversation. I think we depended entirely on our governments to save us, and they did their best. I think we're at a different place in 2021 where we can have national conversations and debates about the pros and cons about vaccine and whether we should lock down and whether we should open. Because I believe no differences are only solved through conversation and through education. And I'm happy that a forum like this is there to discuss the issues. And we will agree and we will disagree, and we can agree to disagree on certain things. But I think with conversation, we move the needle forward for our own sake. I mean, nobody's going to come and save us in this pandemic. I mean, we got to figure it out ourselves. So I'm very happy for this opportunity.
And I am very happy for the agreement that my three panelists gave on the weekend to saying, yes, we will do this. We try to have some thought-provoking and stimulating discussion on Beyond the Headlines. It lands certain people or a certain person in trouble very often. But what is life without that, right? Mr. Archibald is smiling. Mr. Archibald is smiling away. Let me say thank you so much to Ms. Merle Bayer. She is our business executive entrepreneur, owner-operator of L&M Investment. She says she's welding the people together. She provides industrial gases, oxygen to be exact, for our hospitals and health facilities around the island. Mr. Michael Archibald, he's in retirement, but ever so often he decides, this is the second time in a year and like 7 months, I've been trying to see if I could coax him out of retirement, but he's very hesitant. Mr. Archibald, thank you so much. And out of Dominica, our very good friend, the capitalist who knows about the Gestapo, Michelle Williams. Thank you so much for taking the time. I'm certain that Grenada and the world watching Beyond the Headlines, listening on our online streams, are much better off for us having had this discussion this evening. On behalf of the entire production team here at the GVN, I'm Odette Campbell saying so long for now, and we'll see you again next week, the Lord's willing.